I've always been the one holding the damn glue together. The fixer, the reliable one. My name's Lena, I'm 35, and I work as a creative director at a fast-growing design agency downtown. It's intense, but I've worked my way up from coffee fetcher to boardroom voice. And I did it without shortcuts, handouts, or anyone smoothing the road ahead for me. My family, on the other hand. They live like life's an endless buffet, and someone else always picks up the tab. My little brother Noah, 27, still finding himself after 7 job changes in 5 years. And my sister Chloe floats from one passion project to the next, never staying long enough to build anything solid. So when Mom asked me to come over for a family dinner, I didn't think twice. I just sighed, shoved a bottle of Pinot in my bag, and made the drive to their suburban house. They've lived there nearly a decade, nothing fancy, but it's a comfortable home with a manicured lawn and one of those wooden porch swings that creaks just right in the summer. I pulled up and parked behind Noah's battered Toyota. Chloe's little SUV was already there too. Of course, the full squad. Lena, honey, you're here. Mom met me at the door with a hug that lingered a beat too long. Her smile was tired and her eyes looked worn out. Not just tired, defeated. You okay, Mom? I asked, handing her the wine. She gave a strained smile. We'll talk over dinner, sweetheart. Go say hi to your dad. He's in the den with the kids. The kids. We're all adults, but she still says it like we're in elementary school waiting for spaghetti night. I walked into the living room and found Dad in his recliner looking older than I remembered. His posture sagged and even his voice felt smaller when he greeted me. Noah, Chloe, I said, nodding to the couch where both of them sat glued to their phones. Hey, Noah said without looking up. Chloe gave me a once-over and muttered, that jacket's cute. Where's it from? A thrift store? There it was, the Chloe classic, an insult disguised as a compliment. She was still working part-time at a salon, still waiting on her big break, still bouncing between certification programs like they were hobbies. Noah, meanwhile, hadn't held a job longer than 6 months and had recently decided he was meant to invest in crypto, whatever that means. When Mom called us to the table, I could already sense something was off. Pot roast, my favorite. She only makes it on holidays or when something's seriously wrong. We took our usual seats, Dad at one end, Mom at the other, the 3 of us in between. The small talk was thin. I noticed the way Mom kept glancing at Dad. And then just as we'd all started eating, he cleared his throat. There's something we need to discuss, he said. His tone had that weight I recognized, one that meant this wasn't going to be a casual conversation. Mom reached across and took his hand. Her voice was soft. We're in a bit of trouble financially. My fork hovered midair. What kind of trouble? Dad exhaled slowly. I got laid off last month. Budget cuts. And your mom's doctor told her she needs to cut back at work. Her blood pressure's through the roof. She nodded. I've been trying to make it work, but standing all day at the school is getting to be too much. So what are you saying? Noah asked, barely pausing his chewing. It means we're behind on the mortgage, Dad said quietly. And the bills, utilities, groceries, everything really. I felt the room shift. And then all eyes turned toward me like it was the most natural thing in the world. We hate to ask, Mom began, her voice catching. But we're family, and you're in such a good position right now. I already help, I said, my voice calm but firm. I paid for the new fridge last year, covered Chloe's car repair, gave Noah rent money when he got evicted. Twice. Chloe rolled her eyes. That was years ago. It was 6 months ago, I shot back. Yeah, but come on, Lena, Noah said, leaning forward. You're doing really well. You just got promoted, right? It's not like you need all that money sitting in savings. I'm saving for a down payment on a house, I replied. You know that. Chloe gave me a look like I'd just said I was saving up for a trip to the moon. You already have your own place. Don't be greedy. My jaw clenched. This was so on brand it hurt. Dad sighed. We're not asking forever, just until I can find something new. And until I can figure out what's next with work, Mom added, squeezing my hand. I looked around the table, my family, all of them staring at me, waiting. And even though my gut screamed, say no, even though every logical part of me wanted to draw a line right there, what came out of my mouth was, okay, I'll help. The relief that swept over them was instant and suffocating. You're such a blessing, sweetheart, Mom said, her eyes shining. You're really the rock in this family, Dad added. I stared down at my plate, appetite gone, wondering why being the rock felt so much like drowning. The next morning, I sat on my couch with my laptop open, staring at my budget spreadsheet like it had personally betrayed me. My plan for buying a house next year on hold, indefinitely. I set up an automatic transfer to cover the mortgage and closed my banking app before I could talk myself out of it. It's temporary, I whispered. They'll get back on their feet. It's just for a little while. That lie didn't last long. Within 2 weeks, I got a text from Mom asking for money for groceries. Then Dad needed repairs for the car. The week after that, it was the water heater. Every few days brought a new mini crisis. I became the family's emergency hotline. They didn't even say please anymore, just sent requests like they were forwarding utility bills to payroll. Still, I kept telling myself I was doing the right thing. Because what else was I supposed to do? Let them go hungry? Let the lights get shut off? Every time I hit send, a little part of me chipped away. It was like they were taking slices of my future and feeding them into the furnace of their bad planning. By mid-March, my savings had thinned so much I started skipping dinners out with friends. I told them I was just focusing on eating healthier. In reality, I was calculating every dollar like it was oxygen. One Tuesday morning, my phone buzzed with a text from Chloe. Need $2,000 for cosmetology exam. Urgent. Boss says no cert, no shifts. Please? I stared at it blinking. I'd already sent $200 for the mortgage that month. Another $400 for utilities. Last week I gave Noah $700 to invest in something called blockchain dogs. Don't ask. I tried to say no. I really did. But my thumb betrayed me. Transferred. Good luck. Her reply came back instantly. You're a lifesaver. I owe you big. That was rich. Chloe had said she owed me big when I helped her move, when I paid her phone bill for 3 months, and when she borrowed my laptop for a freelance job she never actually did. I knew what I owe you meant. In this family, nothing. I closed the app and rubbed my temples. My dream of owning a home had become a private joke, just another entry under someday maybe. When my birthday rolled around in April, I didn't expect much, but I held out hope for something, a card, a small gesture, even just a night where I wasn't footing the bill. I ordered my favorite Thai food, opened a bottle of wine, and set the table for 4. Mom and Dad showed up first, empty-handed. Sorry, honey, Mom said, giving me a kiss. No gift this year. We didn't want to give you something cheap. I smiled like it didn't sting. I'm just glad you came. Dad opened the fridge without a word and helped himself to a beer. 20 minutes later, Noah walked in with a woman I'd never seen. This is Bree, he announced. We just started dating. Bree didn't even pretend to be interested in me or the occasion. She gave my apartment a once-over and asked if there was anything gluten-free. Noah handed me a small bag wrapped in wrinkled newspaper. Inside was a plastic keychain shaped like a slice of pizza. The tag said, 3 Manch 9. Thanks, I said, forcing a smile. Very fun. They stayed just long enough to inhale 2 plates of food and ask if they could take the leftovers. We're heading to a party, Noah said. This'll come in handy. And just like that, they were gone. Chloe didn't even show. She sent a text that read, sorry, can't make it. Got a date. Happy B-Day, though. Mom and Dad stayed behind sipping wine and launching into another round of financial updates, insurance hikes, dryer repairs, another mystery noise in the garage. I nodded, zoned out my brain on autopilot. When they finally left, I stood in the middle of my apartment and looked around. Empty wine glasses, torn wrapping paper. Silence. That was my 35th birthday, paying for everything, surrounded by people who didn't see me. 2 months crawled by. I kept paying the mortgage. I kept wiring money. I stopped checking my bank account. Then one afternoon, I got a call from Mom. Your dad and I want to do something special for our 40th anniversary, she said. Something nice. We've never really had a proper celebration, you know, I didn't respond. The venue we're looking at is gorgeous, she went on. We'd need about $5,000 to book it and pay the caterer. I almost laughed. I wanted to scream. Instead, I asked, and who's paying for this? Well, she trailed off. We were hoping you could cover it, just until things stabilize again. There it was, the word that haunted me until it never ended. It just shifted. Mortgage, groceries, celebrations, it was all me. I should have said no, but she hit me with the guilt-laced voice she'd perfected over the years. We've been through so much. This would really mean the world. I caved. Again. The party was extravagant. Elegant floral centerpieces, champagne fountains, a string quartet, all funded by me. I wore a simple black dress and blended into the crowd, smiling at people I hadn't seen in a decade. Auntie Ruth complimented my earrings. Uncle Paul asked if I was still single. I nodded, dodging the pity in their eyes. When it was time for the speeches, Noah went first. My parents always believed in me, he said, beaming, even when I didn't believe in myself. Chloe followed with misty eyes, talking about how much love and sacrifice Mom and Dad had poured into their lives. Then it was my turn. I kept it short, congratulated them, wished them joy, sat down. They thanked me politely and then turned back to Chloe to ask about her latest certification class. I faded into the background like a decorative plant, expensive but unnoticed. Later that night, I stepped into the hallway to answer a work call. As I hung up, I caught a snippet of conversation around the corner. My mother's voice. Lena's just our safety net at this point. You ask, she wires the money, like clockwork. Aunt Ruth chuckled. You're lucky to have her. Mom laughed low and tired. Honestly, if she wasn't helping with the mortgage, I doubt we'd even talk as often. I froze. The words sank in slowly. I wasn't a daughter. I was a lifeline. A bank account with legs. My own mother had just said it aloud. I pressed myself against the wall, heart hammering. Then Aunt Ruth asked about the will. We updated it last year, Mom said. Everything goes to Noah and Chloe. They're the ones who'll keep the family going. My name wasn't even mentioned. Not once. I didn't cry. I didn't make a scene. I just walked out down the stairs through the glittering ballroom. No one noticed. Not one person called after me. When I got home, I opened my laptop and logged into my bank account. I went through every transaction. Mortgage payments, grocery transfers, utility bills, loans I'd never see back. The grand total just under $30,000. In 6 months, $30,000, and for what? To be a placeholder, a wallet with Wi-Fi. With one click, I canceled every automatic payment. Then I turned off my phone and went to bed. For the first time in months, I slept through the night. No buzzing, no guilt, no requests, just silence. It took exactly 7 days for the silence to break. My phone rang just after noon, Mom's name flashing on the wow screen like a warning sign. I didn't answer. I already knew why she was calling. A few minutes later, she tried again. Then came the texts. Lena, did you forget the mortgage payment? The bank just called. Can you check? This is urgent. Not, how are you or hope everything's okay. Just straight to panic. Straight to the money. I waited a while, then called back. I didn't forget, I said. My voice was steady. Flat. I canceled it. Silence on the other end, thick and sharp. Then you canceled it, she echoed like she hadn't heard right. Why would you do that? Because I'm done, I replied. I'm not paying it anymore. I'm not covering anything. Not the bills, not the parties, not your emergencies. I'm done. Her voice shifted instantly from confusion to defense. Lena, this isn't like you. What's going on? Are you okay? I'm fine, I said. But I overheard you at the party. You told Aunt Ruth I was just your safety net, that you probably wouldn't talk to me if I wasn't paying your mortgage. That's not what I said, she shot back. You're twisting it. I heard it with my own ears. You misunderstood, she tried again. You know I say things when I'm stressed. I didn't respond. She filled the silence. We're your parents, Lena. You don't just turn your back on your family. I didn't turn my back. I finally stood up, I said. And by the way, I heard about the will too. The house goes to Noah and Chloe. After everything I've paid into it, that's none of your business, she snapped, forgetting to pretend. That house has always been meant for them. Exactly, I said. That's why I'm done. And I hung up. The next few days were a tidal wave. First came the calls from Dad, then Chloe, then Noah. All of them acting like I'd committed some kind of crime. Chloe left a voicemail that could have been a monologue. You're seriously just going to abandon us. You make good money. It's not like you can't afford it. Noah sent a long string of texts ranging from guilt trips to flat-out insults. Wow. Cold. Guess we know who the real selfish one is. He actually ended one message with, "Enjoy your condo, princess. Hope it keeps you warm when you have no family left." Charming. I didn't respond to any of them. I blocked every number. And for the first time in my adult life, I felt still. Not happy exactly, but centered. Like I'd stopped bleeding and finally put pressure on the wound. That Saturday, they showed up at my door. All of them. I saw them through the peephole, Mom, Dad, Chloe, and Noah standing in a tight, agitated cluster. Mom knocked hard. Lena, we need to talk. Dad called. Open the door. I didn't move. We had to borrow money to cover the mortgage this month. Mom cried. We're barely getting by. Why don't you ask the kids you're leaving the house to? I said through the door. Maybe they can chip in. Chloe snapped. You're acting like a spiteful old woman. Just because you're single and bitter doesn't mean you get to punish the rest of us. That one cut deep. Not because it was true, but because she thought it was. She thought that was all I was, a bitter, lonely woman hoarding money out of resentment. "Leave," I said. "You've got 30 seconds before I call the police." They didn't believe me. I started counting out loud. 30, 29. I reached 21 before I heard the footsteps retreating. From the window, I watched them climb into Dad's car and drive away. Chloe was still yelling something as they pulled off, but the windows were up and I couldn't hear it. I didn't care. I thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. The next week brought a new wave from the extended family. Cousins, uncles, second aunts I hadn't heard from in years all suddenly had an opinion. Family is everything. Your parents gave you life. You owe them. I don't know what they did to deserve this. Some messages were gentle guilt, others straight up shaming. All of them had one thing in common. None of them had ever offered a dime to help. Not once. But they all had something to say about me stopping. I blocked, deleted, ignored. Eventually, even that noise died down. In the meantime, something else started to happen. Something unexpected. My bank balance began growing, without the monthly black hole draining everything I actually saw progress. I started putting serious money toward my savings again. Opened a folder on my desktop titled Home Plan and filled it with listings. Nice places with backyard space and warm kitchens, quiet neighborhoods, room for a garden, room to breathe. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the resentment started to fade, not because they deserved forgiveness, but because I deserved peace. I was done being angry, done being hurt. I was just done. About 2 months after the anniversary party, I got a text from an unknown number. It was a photo of a for sale sign in front of my parents' house, followed by a short message. "Thought you'd want to know." No name, no signature. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't feel the satisfaction I thought I would. There was no victory in it, just quiet finality. They'd sold the house, or were trying to. Maybe they couldn't keep up without my help. Maybe they'd finally realized the safety net was gone for good. I didn't call, I didn't ask. I just went back to my real estate browsing. A week later, I made an offer on a 2-bedroom place just outside the city. It had a little fenced-in yard and ivy along the back wall. A red door, a view of the hills. My offer was accepted within days. The closing was quick. I signed the papers with a smile so wide it made my cheeks hurt. And when I walked into that house with the keys in my hand and no one to answer to, I felt something crack open in my chest. Something that had been closed off for years. I wasn't trapped anymore. I wasn't the fallback. I was free. Of course, it didn't end there. The day after I moved in, I got another message from a new number. "It's Dad. Please call. It's urgent." I didn't respond. That night, another. "We're in real trouble, Lena. Please, we're desperate." Then Mom. "We miss you. We've made mistakes. Can we talk?" I put the phone down and poured myself a glass of wine. The messages kept coming, offers, apologies, half-hearted admissions of maybe we didn't treat you right. But it was all tinted with desperation, not remorse. They wanted help, not healing. Eventually, I sent one message. Just one. "I hope you figure things out, but I'm no longer your solution." I didn't block them this time. I didn't need to. Their words didn't have teeth anymore. They didn't shake me. I'd stepped off the stage, and without my lines, the whole performance collapsed. That night, I stood on my back porch looking out over my new lawn. The moonlight spilled across the grass, and the wind rustled the leaves like a quiet applause. I wasn't angry. I wasn't vindictive. I was just free. Finally. And that, more than any confrontation or clever comeback, was the real revenge. 3 months passed without a word from my family. The silence didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt earned. Clean. I settled into my new house the way a tree settles into good soil. Slowly but deeply. I painted the living room a soft slate blue. Put up bookshelves, filled them with memories and paperbacks. I started growing basil and tomatoes in a raised bed out back just to see if I could. I cooked more, listened to music again, even started sleeping through the night without waking in a cold sweat thinking I'd missed a bank transfer. For the first time in my adult life, my money belonged to me. My time belonged to me. My peace belonged to me. I wasn't waiting for the next emergency, the next manipulation, the next reminder that I was only valuable when they needed something. And then one afternoon, my doorbell rang. I opened it to find a courier holding a gold-trimmed envelope. Inside was a wedding invitation. My cousin Emily, who I'd always been close with despite the rest of the family circus. The ceremony was scheduled for late fall at a lakeside venue upstate. Attached was a handwritten note, "Lena, I know things are messy with everyone right now. But you're important to me. I want you there. I'll seat you far from the drama, I promise. No pressure, but it would mean a lot. Love, M. I stood holding that card for a long time. Part of me wanted to toss it, save myself the discomfort. But another part, the part that still remembered sleepovers and shared secrets and birthday cards with glitter, whispered, "So I did." I drove up 2 hours before the ceremony and checked into a little inn nearby. Wore a green silk dress I hadn't had a reason to pull out in years. As promised, Emily had seated me at a table tucked away in the corner with a mix of school friends and aunts I hadn't seen since I was a teenager. The room was beautiful, candles everywhere, laughter echoing across polished wood floors, people hugging like life hadn't been hard lately. And then I saw them. Across the room at a table near the head of the reception hall, Mom, Dad, Chloe, and Noah. They looked older, stiffer, like the weight they'd been ignoring had finally settled onto their shoulders. I kept to myself, talked politely to the woman on my left about her bakery business, complimented the DJ when he played a jazz version of a Taylor Swift song. I thought I'd make it through the night untouched, but fate has a twisted sense of humor. After the cake was cut and the dance floor filled up, I stepped outside for some air. And that's when I saw her mom. Standing alone near the garden archway, arms crossed, eyes tired. She looked at me like she hadn't expected to see me, and maybe she hadn't. "Lena," she said, surprised. "You look, well, thanks," I said. "You too." We stood there in a silence that was more than just awkward. It was heavy, thick with everything we hadn't said. She cleared her throat. "I heard you bought a house," I nodded. "Yeah, closed a couple months ago. Backyard, quiet street. Suits me." "That's good," she said. "That's really good." She stared down at her hands, twisting a silver ring around her finger. "Things have been hard lately. We didn't handle things well." I didn't handle things well. I let her speak. She seemed unsure of how to continue. "Noah's working full-time now, warehouse job. He's trying. And Chloe went back to school. She's studying accounting this time. Something stable." I waited, still silent. She looked up. "We miss you. I miss you." I looked at her and saw not the woman who used my kindness as a convenience, but a woman who had made a mess of things and didn't know how to fix it. "I miss who I thought you all were," I said honestly. "But I don't miss being useful more than I was loved." That hit her. I saw it in the way her mouth opened, then closed, in the way her eyes dropped to the gravel path. "Will you ever forgive us?" she asked, barely above a whisper. The old me would have jumped to offer a lifeline. But I'd changed, grown. "Maybe someday," I said softly. "But not today." She nodded. There was no begging, no promise of change, just quiet. And I appreciated that. When I turned to go back inside, she didn't follow. The rest of the night went smoothly. I danced once, talked with Emily's friends, took a piece of cake home in a napkin. On the drive back to the inn, I felt something unfamiliar. Not victory, not grief, just a sense of space, like I'd finally exhaled after holding my breath for years. The next day, Emily texted me a thank you note. She said it meant the world that I'd come, that she was proud of me. I didn't cry reading it, but I sat on the bed for a long time, letting her words fill the cracks that still ached. Back at home, I returned to my routine. Work, gardening, morning coffee in silence, and slowly I let go of the part of me that kept waiting for another shoe to drop. I knew my family would reach out again. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually they'd try to weave their way back in. Maybe they'd lead with love, maybe with guilt, maybe even with real apologies. But I'd be ready. I knew now what I hadn't known for years. Boundaries aren't cruelty. They're clarity. They're saying I deserve to be treated like a person, not a transaction. And I wasn't negotiating that anymore. I kept the wedding photo of Emily and her husband on my fridge. Not because it was a big life moment, but because it marked something quiet and important. The first time I stood in a room full of people I once feared and felt nothing but steady. I wasn't smaller, I wasn't sad, I was just me. And that was enough. It was a few weeks after Emily's wedding when I got the letter. Not an email, not a text, a real envelope in my mailbox addressed in my dad's handwriting. My first instinct was to toss it, but something about it, maybe the way the ink was smudged or how my name was written in full middle name and all, made me pause. I brought it inside, set it on the kitchen counter, stared at it for a while. Then I opened it. The note was short. No dramatic apologies, no long explanations. Just my father's voice in his usual steady tone. "Lena, we've made a mess of things. There's no excuse for how we treated you. I see it now. I'm sorry. We're sorry. If you ever want to talk, the door is open. Always. Love, Dad? Simple? Plain? Honest, maybe? I read it 3 times. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just folded it and tucked it in the drawer with the extra keys and coupons I never used. The following Monday, I was sipping coffee on the back steps when my phone buzzed. It was from an unknown number. Lena, it's Chloe. I know you don't want to hear from me, but please just read this. I stared at the message for a long moment, then kept reading. I've been thinking a lot. About what you said, about how we leaned on you, how I used you without even realizing it. I want to do better. I'm working now. Actually working. I'm not asking for money or anything. I just want to talk. Maybe rebuild. If you ever feel ready. I didn't respond right away. Honestly, I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to call her out every manipulative comment every time she looked down on me while holding out her hand. But another part, the part that still remembered growing up with her, remembered riding bikes and watching old VHS tapes in the living room, wondered if maybe... This time, it was real. I let the message sit, let myself breathe around it. I had nothing to prove anymore, no weight to carry. Whether I answered or not, I was okay. That truth settled over me like soft rain, quiet but full of life. By mid-November, the first frost had settled in. The garden was finished for the season, and I'd brought my herbs inside, setting them on the windowsill like old friends. I'd started volunteering on weekends, helping out at a community center nearby, mentoring teens interested in design. It felt good to pour into something without being drained. It reminded me that giving didn't have to hurt, that it could come from abundance, not desperation. And then just as I was finding rhythm again, I got the call. It was from Emily. Her voice was gentle. Hey, hope I'm not catching you at a bad time. Not at all, I said, smiling. What's up? She hesitated. So, I wanted to let you know. Your parents are trying to sell what's left of the house. They're still underwater on the mortgage. Chloe and Noah tried to keep it going after you stopped helping, but it's hard. They're barely staying afloat. I exhaled slowly, unsure of how to respond. They asked if I could get in touch with you, she added carefully. They didn't want to overstep. But they're struggling. So they sent you, I asked, not unkindly. Not exactly. I volunteered. I thought you should know. But I'm not pressuring you, Lena. I know how heavy it can be carrying silence. I appreciated that. Emily had always known how to speak gently without pushing. Thanks, I said. Really? Are you okay? She asked. Actually, I said and meant it, I am. Later that night, I sat down with my journal, something I hadn't opened in weeks. I wrote down everything, the letter, the text, the call from Emily. I didn't try to make sense of it. I just let it spill out. No filters, no expectations. And somewhere between sentences, I realized something. They were trying, maybe clumsily, maybe too late, but trying. And the thing was, I didn't need them to fix anything. I didn't need repayment or perfect apologies. I just needed space to decide for myself what came next. So I wrote them a letter. Not long, just enough. Dad, I got your note. Thank you. I've needed space. I still do. I don't know what a future relationship looks like, but I hope you're okay. I'm doing well, truly. Please don't contact me through others. If I want to talk, I will. Take care, Lena. I didn't send one to Chloe. Not yet. Hers would come if the time ever felt right. The next day, I mailed it and didn't look back. Thanksgiving came, and for the first time, I didn't get an invite. And that was fine. Instead, I cooked myself a small meal, roasted vegetables, a single chicken breast, and the kind of mashed potatoes you make with extra butter just because you can. I watched old movies, lit candles, took a nap with the windows cracked to let in the crisp air. No obligations, no stress, just peace. The day ended with my phone buzzing softly, a message from Emily. Happy Thanksgiving, I'm grateful for you. December crept in quietly. No family texts, no Christmas guilt trips, just cold mornings and warm lights and a deep sense of stillness that felt earned. I bought myself a tree, nothing big, just enough to hold a few simple ornaments and that one glass fox I'd kept since college. I hung at last, turned off the overhead lights, and stood there, in the quiet glow. I didn't feel alone, I didn't feel bitter. I just felt whole. And that was the difference. All those years I spent giving and waiting, hoping love would grow out of my sacrifices, none of it had filled me. But now the quiet did. The freedom did. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't holding my breath. I was living. Fully. Honestly, freely. And for the first time, that was enough. Winter softened into early spring. The frost retreated from the lawn and the first hints of green poked through the soil I'd forgotten was still alive beneath the cold. The seasons moved on and so did I. Not dramatically, not with some big announcement. Just slowly the way healing often does, without fanfare. Each day that passed without a call or a knock from them reminded me that I had finally stepped into my own life. And it was a good life, simple but mine. One Saturday morning, I was out front pulling weeds when an unfamiliar car slowed in front of my house. I stood brushing dirt from my gloves, ready for anything. The window rolled down. It was Chloe. She looked different, older, like life had put a few new miles on her. She gave a small wave. "Hey," she said. "Hey," I replied, cautious but calm. She didn't get out, just stayed there idling on the curb. "I was driving by, didn't plan this, but when I saw your place, I figured maybe I'd say hi." "Just hi." I nodded. "Hi then." We both laughed quietly, like two people remembering they used to speak the same language. "It looks nice," she said, glancing at the garden. "You've done a lot with it." "Thanks." Silence settled for a beat. Then she added, "I'm not here to ask for anything. I know that ship's sailed. I just wanted you to know." "I get it now, really get it." I didn't say anything, just waited. She looked down at her hands on the steering wheel. "You helped all of us for years and we never asked what it was costing you. We just assumed you'd always be there, and we were wrong." Her voice cracked just slightly. "I'm not asking to fix anything. I know it's not that easy. I just wanted to say I'm sorry." The words hung in the air. Honest, unearned, but maybe real. She didn't wait for forgiveness. Just nodded once, then pulled away. I watched her drive off, then turned back to my garden. The wind picked up a little tugging at the edge of my jacket, but I didn't feel cold. Weeks passed. I thought about that moment a few times, not with anger, not with hope. Just curiosity. She was growing, maybe. That was her road to walk. Mine was different now. Mine was quiet mornings and clean coffee mugs. It was a bank account that stayed steady and friends who showed up without needing a reason. It was the sound of my own voice in a house that echoed with peace instead of obligation. Every once in a while, someone from the past would reach out. A second cousin, a neighbor from the old block. They'd ask how I was doing and I'd say, "I'm good, really good." And it was true. I had rebuilt my life from the inside out, not by replacing what was lost, but by letting it stay lost. Letting it be what it was and not trying to force it into something better. That was the hardest part, accepting that closure doesn't always come wrapped in an apology or a reunion. Sometimes closure is just choosing to stop bleeding for people who never learned to bandage their own wounds. In May, I planted lavender in the backyard. The smell clung to my hands for hours afterward, earthy and calming. It reminded me that things grow again, even after long winters, even after years of drought. All they need is someone willing to tend the soil. One afternoon, I sat on my porch sipping iced tea and reading a novel I'd picked up on a whim. A neighbor walked by waving. "You've got the coziest place on the block," she said. "Always smells like something blooming." I smiled. That's the idea. And it was. I hadn't just built a home, I'd built a space where I belonged. No pretending, no performing. Just real peace. The kind you don't notice right away because it's not loud. But it stays with you. It sinks in. And you never want to give it up again. Sometimes late at night, I still think about the version of me that stayed too long. The Lena who said yes when her heart screamed no. Who poured every dollar and drop of energy into keeping a family afloat that didn't see her as anything but convenient. I don't hate her. I don't pity her. I just feel grateful for her because she did the hard work. She made the sacrifices, and she also made the choice to walk away. And walking away, that was what saved me. People think cutting ties is cruel. That saying no makes you cold. But what they don't understand is that loving yourself enough to say this isn't love is one of the bravest things you can do. I didn't do it to punish them. I did it because I had to choose between drowning and reaching the shore. And I chose the shore. I haven't spoken to my parents since, not because I hate them, but because nothing's really changed. They're still figuring things out, I'm sure. Maybe they're doing better, maybe not. That's their story now. Mine is different. Mine is calm mornings, good friends, a garden that keeps surprising me. Mine is a peace. Not perfection, just peace. And that in the end was all I ever wanted. Story 2. I'm Lily and I'm 23. Since I was a little child, photography has been my love. I was 10 years old when I received my first disposable camera. I became obsessed with photographing everything. clouds, bugs, and my feet. As a professional photographer now, I take pictures for weddings, aspiring models, and pretty much anybody else who wants good pictures. I recently spent $3,500 on a professional camera. Although it was a significant expenditure, it was well worth it. When my parents learned how much I spent, they almost suffered a stroke. The camera cost you $3,000. Mom's hands had gone up in frustration. You must get a real job, Lily. Something dependable with advantages in a workplace. Dad gave a nod. Jessica, your cousin recently started working at that downtown insurance business. They have dental care. I was tempted to inform them that I do make enough money to cover their monthly mortgage, but I kept my mouth shut. That's my family's problem. My career has never been taken seriously by them. I didn't want to live with my parents once I graduated from the local community college, but I still do. They persuaded me to stay even though I was prepared to go out. Mom had been unemployed for months after losing her job at the bank. I jumped in to rescue them since they were drowning in payments. 2 years have passed since then. I continued to pay the mortgage, even when Mom obtained another work, but her money is still insufficient to buy groceries. Amy, my younger sister, resides with us as well. She is a second-year student at the exclusive Westfield College. Somehow our parents managed to pay for it. There has always been tension in our relationship. Amy was the princess who could do no wrong, the golden kid as a child. I received a B+ on a math test when Amy was 5 and I was 10. Dad asked why it wasn't in an after, hardly glancing at it. They took Amy out for ice cream to lift her spirits after she brought home a C- the same day. This trend persisted until maturity. Amy never forgets that my parents covered her tuition at Westfield College. Lily, how's the crowd at the community college? Whenever her pals were nearby, she would inquire. Saving so much money on college must be good. I made an effort to disregard her remark. Family turmoil is not something I can handle. In any case, I'm seldom at home because I'm always traveling for outdoor shots and working at my tiny studio downtown. Typically, I arrive late at night, reheat whatever's in the refrigerator, and then collapse. However, I like my busy schedule and seeing how much I've improved as a photographer every time a new project is undertaken. I arrived home at approximately 9 o'clock one early summer evening, following a very demanding engagement shoot. It was abnormally quiet in the home. Usually one of Amy's reality shows or Dad's sporting events would be broadcasting on the television. Rather, I discovered the good china on our dining table. Mom only pulls out the items on Thanksgiving. Dad said, "There she is," as I entered with my camera bag hanging over my shoulder. Amy, Mom, and Dad were sat at the table watching me with anticipation. I was skeptical right away. "What's happening?" I asked carefully, putting my stuff down. "We're having a party." Mom smiled. Amy's GPA at the end of her second year was 3.8. I nodded, attempting to recall whether they had ever acknowledged any of my scholastic accomplishments. No, they hadn't. That's fantastic. Flatly, yes, I replied. Well done, Amy. Amy grinned. Regards, sis. Dad cleared his throat. Given how hard Amy works, we believe she deserves a unique present. Every time my parents began discussing unique presents for Amy, I became nervous. Usually my wallet was involved. Amy, unable to control herself, dived in. I would want to accompany my friends on their trip to Florida in 2 weeks. The anticipation hung in the air like a foul stench as all three of them gazed at me. They demanded payment from me. They did, of course. No. I'm not paying for your vacation, I declared plainly. I have financial plans. For my business, I want to hire a larger studio. Amy's face flushed. Who is interested in your dumb picture studio? This vacation is necessary for me. Everyone is leaving, and I have to expand my company. I fired back. Get a job and cover the cost of your trip to Florida if you really want to. Mom let out a gasp as if I had advised Amy to sell a kidney. Lily, how are you able to be so self-centered and cruel? At school, your sister puts forth a lot of effort. This trip is something she deserves, and I put forth a lot of effort every day to provide for this family. I said, raising my voice. I'm worthy of making professional investments. Amy began screaming that I was destroying her life. Dad gave a disappointed shake of his head. Mom kept calling me egotistical. I got up without touching my meal. As Amy screamed after me up the stairs, I responded, I'm done with this conversation, and left. For the days ahead, there was enough tension in the home for a knife to pierce it. I genuinely benefited from Amy giving me the quiet treatment. My parents would hardly say good morning before continuing to ignore me. I immersed myself into my work and traveled the city looking at possible new studio locations. One had water damage in the corner, one was too tiny, and one was too dark. It was more difficult than I had anticipated to find the ideal spot. A week or so after our dinner altercation, I returned home at midnight after yet another unsatisfactory studio showing. My parents were watching a late-night show on the TV, which was the only source of light in the otherwise dark living room. "Amy, where are you?" Observing the strange silence, I inquired. My parents looked at each other. The delay caused my stomach to knot up. This afternoon, she and her companions took a plane to Florida. At last, Dad spoke in a purposefully informal tone. Confused, I scowled. How did she pay for that one more pause? This time longer. Mom proudly raised her chin. We handed her the money for the vacation after selling her camera. For a moment, the planet ceased its rotation. "What are you?" I hurried upstairs 2 steps at a time to my chamber. I always kept my camera on my desk in its case, always. However, the desk was now vacant. There was no longer a camera case. As I ripped through my closet, my heart pounded between my ribs. Went through my drawers and looked under the bed. Nothing. My professional camera, which cost $3,500, I had lost the means of earning a living to provide for this unappreciative family. I came crashing back downstairs, my anger growing with every step. "Have you gone insane?" Regardless of whether the neighbors heard I yelled, I make my living from that camera. I make money with it. The same sum of money that covers your home loan. Dad squirmed uneasily in his chair but remained silent. Mom shrugged. "Well, we wouldn't have needed to sell it if you had just given Amy the money for her trip in the first place." I gazed at them, perplexed by their reasoning. "So I'm to blame for this. I'm somehow at fault for what you stole from me." "Lily, stop being so dramatic." At last, Dad said something. "It's only a camera. Another one is yours to purchase." Only a camera. The identical camera that I had been saving for months. The same camera that helped me get bigger clients and improve the caliber of my work. Something shattered inside of me as I genuinely looked at my parents. There was no chance that these folks would change. Amy would always come first for them. Every time they took something that was rightfully mine, they pretended that I owed them. I returned to my room and took out my baggage without saying anything more. Without bothering to fold anything, I began tossing clothing in. I retrieved my laptop, the external hard disks that held years' worth of my photographic work, and my toiletries from the restroom. Mom showed up at my door. "What are you doing?" I didn't even give her a glance. "How does it appear I'm going?" "Lily, you're going overboard. Amy will undoubtedly bring you a lovely memento from Florida." A memento, as though that will atone for the theft of my work-related equipment. I didn't even try to answer after I filled my car to the brim with everything. I went downstairs with the luggage. My parents came after me. Their faces showed a mixture of frustration and incredulity, as though they were unable to comprehend my intense emotions. As I packed the final bag into my trunk, Dad replied, "You'll be back. Nothing will be resolved by this outburst." Without saying farewell, I slammed the trunk shut and climbed into the driver's seat. They were waiting for me to alter my mind, standing in the driveway with their arms crossed, as I could see in my rearview mirror. I took a car downtown to my little picture studio. Just a repurposed office with plenty of natural light. It wasn't much, but it was mine. In between shooting, I occasionally took naps on the little sofa in the corner. It would be my bed tonight. The truth of what had transpired struck me like a tidal wave once I was alone myself in the silence of my studio. My entire body ached from the loud, agonizing cries I let out as I fell into the couch. When I had no more tears, I sobbed out of rage, betrayal, and the heartbreaking knowledge that my own family didn't appreciate me at all. I used my phone to check my bank account. I had been putting up around $15,000 in savings for a larger, better studio. My dream would now have to wait. I have to get a new camera right now or risk losing future employment. I had to locate a place to reside as well. I gave my pal Megan a call in the morning. She had lately said that one of the apartments in the tiny apartment complex her parents owned, which was close to my studio, was unoccupied. I told Megan what had happened, and she answered, "Of course you can have it. It's yours if you want it, but my parents were planning to list it the next week. The monthly rent is $1,200. I needed an apartment right away, but it was more than I wanted to spend. The specialized shop where I bought my initial geared downtown camera was my next destination." How quickly did the salesman identify me? "Don't tell me that your Canon has changed, Lily." I made an effort to grin. Long story short, if it's feasible, I need the exact identical model today. He blew a whistle. "That buy comes to $3,500. Are you certain about this? I have no other option. This weekend I have a wedding photo shoot." I picked up the keys to my new apartment and headed to Megan's building after purchasing the new camera. Although it was tiny, a one-bedroom apartment with a kitchenette and living dining area, it was tidy and well lit. It was also, and above all, mine. Moving my belongings out of the car and putting up the necessities took up the remainder of the day. I could put off buying furnishings and a bed for the time being. You may use an air mattress. My phone was constantly blazing with my folks' calls and texts throughout the day. One of the messages caught my attention at last. "You're acting like a child. We can resolve this when you get home. Mom is quite anxious." Figure this out. Nothing needed to be worked out. I had been robbed. It's simple. Dad texted me again. Adults act in this manner. Lily. When necessary, they assist their family. Be mature and assume accountability. It was astonishingly bold. The only responsible member of this family was me, who paid their mortgage while they gave preference to my sister. None of the messages got a response from me. Rather, I concentrated on getting comfortable in my new location and getting ready for my next photo shoots. I couldn't risk losing any money. Right now, I got an alert on my phone that night. Against my better judgment, Amy had shared something on Instagram. I took it open. With a margarita in hand and designer sunglasses that likely cost as much as my current rent, my sister was posing on a white sand beach. "Best vacation ever," was the caption. "We are grateful to our parents for arranging this trip." Something hardened inside of me at that very moment. With a few taps, I was able to access the automatic payment section of my banking app. I stopped making my parents' monthly mortgage payment. After I blocked all of their phone numbers, Amy's finally allowed them to handle their own money. For the first time in years, I threw my phone aside and reclined on my air mattress while gazing up at my new apartment's ceiling. In addition to feeling strangely free, I felt totally alone. The following 2 weeks passed quickly as I adjusted to my new life and worked. To keep my mind busy, I threw myself into photography and planned as many shoots as I could. The new apartment still had the feel of temporary living quarters with bare walls, little furniture, and cardboard boxes stacked in corners. It was mine, though. Nobody could make me feel bad for not funding their lives or sell my possessions here. Keeping busy had allowed me to avoid thinking about my family, but they were making it difficult. They began making calls from other phones after I blocked their numbers. I would sometimes hear that we needed to speak because I had to answer every unknown number in case it was a potential client. I didn't participate. What could be discussed, I had made my decision, and they had made theirs. The phone rang with an unknown number one Tuesday morning while I was editing pictures from a maternity session. I gave a cautious response. "Photographer Lily Evans." It was my mother's voice, sharp and breathless. "What have you done? The bank called." Her voice shook with anger. "They said our mortgage payment is late, that it was declined." "Is that so?" I replied evenly. "You canceled the payments, didn't you?" "After everything we've done for you," I almost laughed. "Everything you've done for me, like stealing my camera, like constantly favoring Amy, like making me feel worthless despite the fact that I've been supporting all of you. It was just a camera," she practically shouted into the phone. "I never thought you'd be so vindictive over something so small," holding a grudge against her own family. The camera was the last straw. I cut in surprise by how calm I felt. I'm done being used. I'm done being the family ATM while being treated like a second-class citizen in my own home. There was a pause, then my mother's voice turned pleading. "Lily, we can't afford the mortgage on our own. Your father's ours. Got cut back last month, and with Amy's tuition, that's not my problem anymore," I said firmly. "You chose Amy over me again. Now you can figure out how to support her without my help." I ended the call and blocked that number too. My hands were shaking, but I felt oddly liberated for the first time in my adult life. I had stood up for myself against my family. The next few days passed peacefully. I booked 3 new wedding clients and acquired a second-hand desk and chair for my apartment. I was steadily establishing my new life piece by piece. Then one afternoon, when I was in the middle of a picture session with a local businessman, the studio door burst open. "I'm very sorry to interrupt," said my assistant Jenny, "but there are people pressing on seeing you. They won't leave." Before I could react, my dad and Amy rushed past Jenny into the studio. "We need to discuss right now," Dad barked. His cheeks went hot. The businessman looked worried. I apologized sincerely and provided a discount on his photographs, then asked Jenny to reschedule him for later that evening. After my customer left, I turned to face my family. Amy stood slightly behind our parents' arms folded, staring at me. She was sporting a deep tan from her Florida trip, the one that had cost me my camera and eventually my connection with my family. "You can't just barge into my office," I said, attempting to keep my professional cool in spite of the rage that was building within of me. Mom said, "You left us with no choice. Our numbers were banned by you. I have nothing to say to you, therefore you refuse to respond to our messages." Dad moved forward. "Well, young lady, we have a lot to say. Your mortgage payments must be resumed right away. The bank has given us an extension, but it won't last forever." I gaped at him in shock. "Did you truly just show up at my workplace to ask for money? Mom claimed it's not demanding. You have an obligation to support your family, my obligation." I said it again. "Did Amy have to turn down a trip that was funded by stolen property? I don't know, was it your duty to refrain from robbing your daughter?" At last, Amy raised her voice. "Be less theatrical. It was only a dumb camera. I earned a living off that dumb camera. I retaliated by covering the cost of the roof over your ungrateful head." Dad's expression grew glum. "That's sufficient. My own daughter will not speak to me in this manner. You'll either resume those payments, or what I posed a challenge. We'll let everyone know what you did, though," Mom said. "Your cousins, aunts, and uncles. You left your family when we needed you, and everyone will know it. Proceed." Startled by my own bravery, I said, "Tell them that once you took my work-related equipment to pay for my pampered sister's beach vacation, I stopped providing for my family. In fact, I'll report the theft of my camera to the police if you don't leave my studio immediately and stop bothering me." The hue vanished from my dad's face. "Wouldn't you give me a try?" I took my phone out. It was valued at more than $3,000. Therefore, it is considered big theft in the state. I worry how becoming a part of a theft case will affect Amy's prestigious institution. As the truth of what they had done finally set in, my parents remained still. There have never been repercussions for them. No, not for me. I held out my phone and said, "You have 30 seconds to leave before I call the police." Backward, they moved toward the door. Amy is being dragged along by Mom's arm. Dad mumbled, "This isn't over," but his warning seemed vacuous. "It's for me," I said. I had trouble sleeping that night. In my studio, I repeatedly reenacted the altercation, questioning whether I had gone too far. Then I recalled how they had broken into my office, intimidated me, and shown no remorse at all for taking my camera. Amy's Instagram post came back to me. My mother's contemptuous remarks are a result of years of being viewed as less significant than my sister. The guilt vanished. They had already made their decisions, they could now accept the repercussions. That altercation in my studio was 3 months ago. With its colder temperatures and vibrant foliage, autumn has come, making for beautiful outdoor shooting opportunities. In spite of the emotional upheaval, my firm remained successful. Actually, I could have saved more aggressively if I hadn't had to worry about providing for my family all the time. Since that day, neither Amy nor my parents had contacted me personally. After I threatened to call the police, they eventually stopped attempting to get in touch with me. Sometimes the stillness was a deep aching, yet other times it was a comfort. During calm times, I would recall rare, quiet afternoons spent watching movies with my family, or birthdays celebrated around our dining table. However, those nostalgic times were fleeting. I was constantly reminded that I had made the proper decision in severing relations by the fact that they had treated me in reality. On a cool October Saturday morning, someone moved into the chair across from me as I was looking at client images at a nearby coffee shop. I was shocked to see my cousin Rachel as I looked up. Holding out her hands, she added, "Don't worry, I come in peace. I simply wanted to check in with you." Growing up, Rachel and I had always been close, but she was also close to Amy. Since I moved out, I hadn't spoken to her. "I'm fine," I said warily. "How did you discover me people in small towns converse?" She looked at the screen of my laptop. "Everything appears to be going well." I nodded as I awaited the true reason for her visit. Rachel fidgeted with a packet of sugar. "Hey, I heard about the camera incident. That was a mess. What did they do to you? This caught me off guard." "Who informed you, my folks?" "No." Rachel gave a head shake. "They have been telling everyone that you left them because of a financial dispute in the family. Amy was the one who lost it. When she learned that they had sold your camera, she felt bad. I discreetly absorbed this information. Amy at least had a conscience. But late. In any case, Rachel went on. Your parents' house isn't doing well. Amy is working at the mall to help pay her bills while she takes a break from college. Both of your parents are taking on more work. They were severely impacted by the mortgage issue." I waited for the guilt to overwhelm me, but it never happened. Rather, I experienced an odd feeling of fairness. At last, they were feeling the repercussions of their behavior and discovering the true meaning of accountability. Finally, I added, "I'm sorry it came to that." However they made their decision, Rachel gave a slow nod. I'm not trying to persuade you to assist them. In fact, I wanted to let you know that I believe you made the proper decision. For years they exploited you. Her assistance was unexpected but appreciated. For the following hour we caught up. I'm careful not to bring up my parents too often. Rachel told me she wanted me to take pictures of her engagement next spring before she left. I appreciated her demonstrating unity in this way. I considered what Rachel had said after she had gone. It was hard to reconcile the idea of Amy working retail and my parents working overtime with the entitled family that had insisted that I pay for their way of life. Maybe they would learn something important from this adversity. I leased a new, bigger photography studio downtown 2 weeks later. High ceilings, ideal natural lighting, and a little loft area that could be used as a client changing room were all features of the room. As I set up my equipment in the new location on moving day, I realized that my expanding clientele made the nearly double studio rent cost worthwhile. An unidentified number texted me. It was a picture of my former bedroom, which has been totally converted into a home office. "Sold the house," stated the note. Cutting back to an apartment. "I thought you ought to be aware." My father's writing style was recognizable to me. Terse, objective, and emotionless. I delivered the message, but I didn't answer. It signified the end of that phase of my life. That night, I was sitting on my new studio floor with a bottle of champagne and takeaway cartons. I gave myself permission to really enjoy my freedom. Despite the difficulties along the way, I had come out stronger. I was beginning to feel at home in my flat. Plants on each windowsill framed reproductions of my favorite photos, and a cozy reading nook near the biggest window were all personal touches I had added. I was designing an environment that only represented my wants and preferences for the first time. I was also seeing steady growth in my savings account. My idea of one day buying my own home was no longer just a pipe dream, and it was now a realistic objective. I had begun looking at programs for first-time homebuyers and allocating a certain percentage of every payment for a down payment. Setting the champagne and surveying my new studio, I thought on all that had transpired. My parents had always advised me that I needed something steady and dependable for a profession, and that photography wasn't a viable option. As they tried to adapt to life without my financial assistance, I was driving on my own terms. I didn't mean any harm to them. They were still my family in spite of everything, and I will always have a soft spot for them. However, I didn't regret establishing limits and expecting deference. Love sometimes entails allowing others to suffer the repercussions of their deeds. Maybe we can get back in touch on more equal terms eventually. Maybe not. In any case, I was content with my choice. My new studio was bathed in golden light as the sun started to set. I grabbed my camera, which was a substitute for the one they had sold, and took a picture. The final picture had warm light, deep shadows, and limitless potential. I made the decision to frame it and display it in my studio as a memento of my progress. Now told from my perspective and according to my wishes, this was my narrative. The future appeared to me like an unexposed frame, open and full of possibilities. Story 3: You. Hello, my name is Sarah. I'm going to tell you Helen's story today, which goes by this title. The only reason my relatives attended my housewarming was to make me publicly hand my sister and her 3 children my house. She is more deserving. They stated so, therefore I took a measure that made them confront their rightful punishment. 40 missed calls followed. Okay. Come on. I'm Helen and I accomplished it at last. I purchased my own home after nearly 8 years of living like a monk. Saying no to everything for 8 years? No nice clothing, no movies, no out-of-town dinners, and no vacations while my buddies shared pictures from beach resorts on Instagram. I was browsing at secondhand shops and eating ramen noodles. However, it was worthwhile. The house is little, yet it belongs to me. It has a good kitchen, 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and a living area that can accommodate more than just a couch. I really started crying as I walked inside it for the first time after signing the paperwork. I didn't have to worry about significant repairs because the previous owners took fantastic care of it. Simply make it home and move in. The first week was spent rushing around appliance and furniture stores. Not very fancy. I still manage my finances carefully, but I have all I needed. A sofa that doesn't cause me back pain. More than 2 individuals can be seated at this eating table. A real working washing and dryer. Every purchase was like the morning before Christmas, after everything had been put up for 2 weeks. I made the decision to throw a housewarming celebration. I had never had a house worth warming, thus I had never had one before. I produced a list of everyone I wanted to invite, including my family, some neighbors I'd met, college pals, and friends from work. I started by messaging my folks. They reside in this little dilapidated house around an hour distant. For the past 3 years, Dad has been discussing repairing the roof, but he never seems to get around to it. Every time I come, which isn't very often these days, Mom complains that the kitchen is too tiny. I then sent my sister Sarah a message. She is divorced, has 3 children, Emma, Jake, and Tiny Lucy, and is 4 years older than me. They range in age from 7 to 10. Adorable children, but a pain. Across town, Sarah resides in a 2-bedroom apartment. She only works half-time at an office job because her ex has been paying decent child support. She often complains about how exhausted she is and how difficult raising the kids is. I had a straightforward message. Hi everyone, significant news. I purchased a home. In 2 weeks there will be a housewarming celebration. This is the address. I'm hoping you can make it. Looking forward to showing you around. I thought my phone would ring right away. I assumed my mother would call and ask a ton of questions about the property and the area, the amount I spent. I assumed Sarah would want to know about the bedrooms and if her children would be attending a decent local school. I assumed Dad would inquire about the yard and garage, but he didn't. Silence on the radio. 20 minutes after I sent the message, my buddy Jessica gave me a call. Helen. God, oh God, you purchased a home. Tell me everything. What is the number of bedrooms? Is there a swimming pool? How would you describe the neighborhood? Within an hour, my coworker Mike responded to my SMS. Well done. All of that saving would be worthwhile, I knew. I'm eager to watch it. However, my family, nothing. Not a word. I kept looking at my phone, wondering whether I had missed a text or a call. Their phones could have died. Perhaps they were simply preoccupied. However, days went by with nothing. No inquiries, no thrill, no congrats. It seemed as though I had never sent the message. I made an effort to keep my thoughts to myself. Making the home ready for the party kept me busy nevertheless. I placed my order at this downtown Italian eatery. Enough bread salad and spaghetti for 20 people. I purchased beverages, furnished the living area, and ensured that every space had the ideal appearance. My pals started phoning to ask if they could view the entire house, what to bring, and what time to arrive. I felt better about my family's quiet because of the joy in their voices. Perhaps they were simply preparing a surprise. Instead of hearing about everything over the phone, they might have preferred to see everything in person. I had trouble sleeping the night before the party. I made sure everything was clean and adjusted the cushions as I went around each room. It was this. I was going to tell everyone I cared about my first significant grown-up accomplishment. The housewarming celebration day came sooner than I had anticipated. My heart was already pounding with tension and excitement when I got up at 6 in the morning. I ran around frantically all morning to make sure everything was flawless. I made sure all the bathrooms had clean towels and soap, rearranged the throw pillows on my new couch, and vacuumed every room twice. The food was delivered on schedule. Tiramisu for dessert. 3 enormous trays of pasta Caesar salad and garlic bread. I arranged everything on the dining table. Having actual department store plates was still something I was getting used to. Genuine wine glasses that matched. Not the paper stuff I'd been saving money on for years. Everything appeared flawless, similar to something from a magazine. It was about 6 when people began to arrive. Jessica arrived first, beaming broadly and carrying a bottle of pricey wine. Helen, this location is truly incredible. It's unbelievable that you did it. As if she couldn't believe it was real, she touched everything as she went about. Look at these hardwood floors and the crown molding. Girl, you really made it. Mike brought his girlfriend Sarah. Not my sister Sarah. Different. Sarah. And they spent forever looking at every single room. The light in the kitchen is incredible, his Sarah kept saying, opening and closing cabinet doors. And look at this backyard. You could have barbecues out here. Maybe get a pool someday. They were genuinely excited, asking about my mortgage rate and how I'd found the place and whether the neighbors were friendly. My college friend Tom showed up with his wife and their baby, bringing a housewarming gift wrapped in silver paper. Helen, I remember when you started saving for this, he said, giving me a big hug. You used to eat those 99-cent frozen dinners every night just to put more money away. Look at you now. Within an hour, my house was full of people laughing and talking and complimenting everything from the hardwood floors to the way I'd arranged the furniture. The living room buzzed with conversations about home improvement, neighborhood recommendations, and stories about everyone's own first home purchases. I felt this warm glow watching people enjoy themselves in my space, seeing them comfortable and happy in the home I'd worked so hard to create, but no family. I kept checking my phone every few minutes, thinking maybe they'd called or texted to say they were running late. Nothing. No missed calls, no messages, no explanations. I tried not to let it show on my face, but inside I felt this growing knot in my stomach. I kept making excuses to walk by the front window, hoping to see their car pulling up around 7:30, just when I was starting to think they really weren't coming. I heard a car door slam outside through the window. I saw my parents walking up the front path with Sarah and her 3 kids trailing behind them. My heart jumped with relief and excitement. Finally, they made it. After all, I hurried to the front door and opened it before they could knock. "Mom, Dad?" "Sarah, you made it?" I was becoming worried, I exclaimed, literally jumping on my toes. But something was awry. Immediately. The vibe was all wrong. Mom scarcely glanced at me, just nodded stiffly and said, "Helen Mel smile." No congrats, no excitement at all. Dad gave me this odd half embrace that seemed forced and unpleasant, like he was ticking a box on a to-do list. Sarah pulled her kids into the living room without even saying hello to me, simply muttering something about them needing to behave themselves. "I'm so thrilled you're here," I said, attempting to infuse some passion into the occasion. "Come on, let me show you around." Mom and Dad exchanged this glance I couldn't decipher. "We can view it later," Mom answered coldly. After a few minutes of awkward small conversation, Sarah told to her kids, "You 3 remain here and behave. I'm going to look around." While Mom and Dad remained in the living room, hardly speaking to anybody, she vanished upstairs. 20 minutes later, Sarah returned downstairs, went straight to her parents, and whispered something in their ears. All evening for the first time. I caught a grin on their faces. Not at me. It had to do with whatever Sarah had just told them, not the home. They appeared content, almost arrogant. Approximately 30 minutes later, Tom raised his glass of wine. "Time for some toast, I believe. It's your turn, Helen." My grandma Dad's mother lifted her glass first as everyone gathered around. She said, "I'm quite proud of Helen. She put forth more effort than anyone I know to realize this ambition. This home is evidence that perseverance is rewarded." Everyone applauded. Jessica continued by expressing how motivating it was to see me follow through on my saving strategy. Mike discussed my work ethic and how I earned this achievement. As I listened to these folks praise my accomplishment, I started crying. Mom, however, cleared her throat and got to her feet. I gave her an eager look as the room fell silent. Instead, she gave me a straight gaze while wearing an almost irate attitude. "Helen is unable to offer congratulations," she spoke loudly. "She has acted selfishly and carelessly." The room fell quiet. I had the impression that I had been hit in the stomach. Rather than handing this house on to Sarah, who has 3 kids, Mom went on raising her voice, "Helen likes it alone." Sarah is struggling for her kids' happiness. She's worn out and Helen handles everything with ease. Not believing what I was hearing, I stood there in disbelief. Mom's eyes began to well up with real tears and her voice began to break. "Helen is not as deserving of this mansion as Sarah is." Sarah approached her children as if at the same moment and gave them a dramatic embrace as if to shield them from some horrible destiny. Although they were perplexed, the children cooperated. I was unable to talk, I was unable to even think. My own mother was telling everyone that I didn't deserve what I had worked 8 years to obtain, even though this was meant to be my celebration. Then my mom's cousin, my Aunt Carol, got to her feet. "What do you know?" She pointed to me and said, "Linda's right. Helen, you ought to offer your sister this house after giving it some serious thought. You don't need room as much as those youngsters do." However, my grandma got to her feet right away. "Not at all," she responded firmly. "This mansion was obtained by Helen herself. She is under no obligation to share it." Then there was anarchy, with statements like, "Think about those poor children," and "Family comes first." Half the crowd began to agree with Mom and Aunt Carol. The other half stood up for me, claiming that it was my home and my decision. My Aunt Helen was being literally yelled at by Jessica. Saved for 8 years. This is crazy. Mike was debating about family responsibilities with a relative I hardly knew. Mom, Dad, and Sarah exchanged these contented looks with one another amongst all of this conflict. Mom then gave a deep, phony sigh. She stated passionately, "We don't want to ruin Helen's party. We ought to go." Without saying anything more to me, they picked up the children and departed, leaving a room full of people debating whether or not I should sell my property. Before people began to go in groups, still fighting as they left my front door, the violence raged on for another 20 minutes. Staring at the wreckage left by what should have been the most joyful night of my life, I stood in my empty house. Napkins were crumpled on the floor, wine glasses were strewn all around the living room, and half-eaten spaghetti dishes were left on tables. The quiet was overwhelming. An hour previously, these rooms had been full with yelling and shouting. In an attempt to comprehend what had just transpired, I began mechanically tidying up. In my living room, my own mother had informed everyone that I wasn't worthy of my home. Half of my visitors agreed with my sister's inspections of every room, which seemed to indicate that she was already preparing to move in. Memories began to resurface as I filled the dishwasher. Over the years, I had provided financial support to my family. I believed I was being a decent sister and daughter. 3 years ago, I gave them $500 from my house fund when their mother called to cry over their mortgage payment. Dad needed money to fix his automobile. The $800 was gone. Additionally, Sarah's divorce attorney received $5,000 to improve her child support. When they asked, I would always assist them. I had provided them with funds for repairs, emergencies, and legal bills. However, when had they ever acknowledged my accomplishments? Had they ever taken pride in my accomplishments? I had seen the truth tonight. They did not view me as family, but as an ATM. I went to bed after cleaning, but I was unable to fall asleep. My mother's voice would always say, "I have nothing to congratulate," whenever I closed my eyes. At 8 a.m., my phone rang. I was still tired acute. Without checking the caller ID, I snatched it up. Helen. Mom spoke in a clear, professional tone. No salutations, no regrets for ruining my party. Have you given yesterday's conversation any thought? How soon will you give Sarah the house? What I was hearing was unbelievable. My housewarming party was ruined by you, Mom. In front of all my friends, you made me feel ashamed. And you're calling now to insist that I vacate my home. Helen, don't be so dramatic. We are discussing what is right. Sarah needs room for her 3 kids. All that space is occupied by a single person. It's self-centered. I was employed by this house for 8 years. Sarah saved every penny for 8 years while working part-time and receiving child support. I live here. You'll have second thoughts, Mom said icily. You'll realize that your family comes before your own self-interest. She ended the call. I was trembling with rage as I sat there looking at my phone. Don't apologize. No recognition of the wrongness of what she had done. Only accusations and demands. The situation deteriorated a few days later. Much worse. I was at work when Jessica called. Anger tightened her voice. Helen, have you seen your mother's Facebook post? What post? You need to look at it right now. I can't believe she did this. I opened Facebook with trembling fingers and found Mom's post immediately. The photos hit me first, pictures of Sarah's apartment taken in dim lighting, showing cluttered rooms and toys scattered everywhere. The kids looked tired and unhappy in every shot. But then there were photos of my house from the housewarming party, bright and spacious, with me raising a wine glass and smiling. The caption made my stomach drop. While some people selfishly celebrate in their big, empty houses, my daughter Sarah struggles to provide for her 3 beautiful children in cramped conditions. It breaks my heart to see my grandchildren suffering while their aunt cares only about herself. Sarah works so hard and deserves better than this. Some people get everything handed to them while others fight just to survive. The post had dozens of comments already. Relatives I barely knew were writing things like Helen should be ashamed and those poor children deserve better. And Carol had written a long comment about how I should do the right thing and help my sister. But the photos were lies. I'd been to Sarah's apartment many times. It was nice, clean, and a good neighborhood. These pictures were staged to look depressing, probably taken after the kids had been playing all day without cleaning up. My phone started ringing constantly. Relatives, family, friends, people I hadn't talked to in years were calling to lecture me about family responsibility. Cousin Jenny called crying about how I was tearing the family apart. Uncle Bob left a voicemail saying I was disappointing everyone and needed to make things right. I stopped answering my phone altogether. I considered changing my number just to make it stop. Then Grandma called. Helen, sweetie, can you come visit me? I think we need to discuss. I drove to Grandma's place feeling discouraged. She was 82, yet still sharp as a pin, living independently in the same house where she'd reared Dad. When I stepped in, she took one glance at my face and pulled me into an embrace. Sit down, honey, tell me what's been happening. I displayed her mom's Facebook post, spoke about the phone calls and the abuse. Grandma didn't use the internet much, so she hadn't seen any of it. She studied the images attentively, then looked at me with sad but resolute eyes. This is incorrect, Helen. What your mother is doing is manipulation, plain and simple. I feel like I'm going mad. Grandma, half the family believes I should just give up all I worked for. Quietly, she whispered, your parents asked me to speak with you. I was supposed to persuade you to give Sarah the house. They believed you would pay attention to me. My heart fell. Grandma didn't agree with me either. Then she grinned, though. I warned them not to. Helen, you weren't that house. While Sarah lived well on child support for 8 years, you made sacrifices. You keep your homecoming a secret. Mom insists, however, that family should come first. Family members ought to encourage one another rather than undermine one another. Your mother's actions at that gathering, along with this post. Family isn't that. Bullying is what that is. After making me tea, Grandma and I spoke for 2 hours. She told me stories about how she had never expected assistance from anybody and had worked hard throughout her life. She recalled all the times I had provided financial support to my family and inquired as to whether they had ever done the same for me. Keeping what you earned does not make you selfish. Helen, you are not in charge of solving everyone else's issues. Sarah made the decision to have 3 kids. Sarah decided to take a part-time job. You didn't make those decisions, she did. I was able to breathe for the first time in days. Someone got it. I had someone on my side. Don't allow them to intimidate you into abandoning your aspirations. As I prepared to depart, Grandma remarked, "Everything will work out if you don't back down." I felt more at ease than I had since the housewarming celebration as I drove home. Grandma was correct. I had put in too much effort to allow someone to take this away from me. I was at last beginning to feel like myself again a few days after I spoke with my grandmother. I had blocked the most of the family members that were troubling me, and the nuisance calls had decreased. Perhaps everything would settle down and I could go on with my life, I reasoned. Then I heard someone knock on my door on Saturday morning. My heart fell when I gazed through the crowds. Mom, Dad, and Sarah were standing immediately behind Grandma on my porch. They all appeared solemn, as though they were there to provide some sort of assistance. I grudgingly opened the door. "What's going on, Grandma Helen?" "We must have a serious discussion." We all together. I opened the door for them. I couldn't understand why my sister and parents had been brought here by my grandmother. Had she reconsidered her decision to back me? As we sat at my dining table, I felt a knot in my gut from anxiousness. As if they were going to win something, Mom and Dad appeared to be quite happy. Sarah's calculating expression from the housewarming celebration continued to haunt my home. Grandma's throat cleared. "I've given this problem a lot of thought and I've come to a serious conclusion." Mom excitedly leaned forward. "We're so happy that you're finally taking this seriously, Mother. Yesterday I had a meeting with my attorney." Grandma went on and I decided to alter my mind. Dad began to smile and Mom and Sarah instantly brightened up. They believed that Grandma was going to back their scheme to seize my residence. At first I was going to leave everything to Robert, in order for Dad to share it equally amongst his daughters, Grandma remarked, glancing. That wouldn't be fair at all, though, as this entire incident has showed me. My parents began to lose their grins. I'm dividing my house 50-50 between Helen and Sarah, and I'm leaving Helen my whole funds of about $400,000. Sarah's face became crimson and then white. What? It's unfair. Helen has a home already. It's me who has kids that require assistance. Still share your grandmother's voice. To purchase her home, Helen saved for 8 years. She sacrificed and worked hard. You've been getting freebies from everyone else while living lavishly on child support. Mom sprang to her feet, her voice trembling with rage. You can't do this, Mother. Compared to Helen, Sarah encounters that money more frequently. You're rewarding Helen for her self-centered behavior. Grandma said calmly, I'm rewarding responsibility and hard work. Sarah apparently didn't learn something that Helen did. At last, Dad said something. This isn't right, Mom. We are related. We ought to divide everything equally. Did you contribute equally to Sarah's wedding, but not to Helen's celebration of her college graduation? When you couldn't spare a weekend to assist Helen in moving into her first apartment, but spent 2 weeks helping Sarah with her baby, did you share equally? There was silence in the room. The fact that Grandma had noticed their favoritism over the years left my parents in disbelief. Sarah began to cry, but it wasn't true tears. Please keep your great-grandchildren in mind, Grandma. They require consistency. They require room. Helen is a single individual. Helen deserved her privacy. Additionally, you should quit attempting to take their aunt's property and concentrate on bettering your own circumstances if you truly cared about your kids' stability. Mom's face was becoming more and more flushed. Mother, you will permanently destroy this family if you do this. Grandma grinned, but not in a nice way. When you made the decision to publicly humiliate Helen and demand that she give up everything she had worked for, this family was already in ruins. All I'm doing is making sure the harm doesn't worsen. Then she got up and faced her mother. And if you don't erase that terrible post about Helen by tomorrow morning and publish an apology, I'll modify my will again and give everything to Helen. Every cash, every property. Mom, Dad, and Sarah all fell utterly quiet. The danger hit them like a slap. You have till noon tomorrow to apologize publicly to your daughter. After that, my lawyer will be making some further revisions. She gestured to the front entrance. Now leave Helen's residence and consider your next course of action. They looked astonished and disheartened as they walked away without saying anything further. When they left, I gave Grandma a firm embrace. "Thank you," I muttered. "It's unbelievable that you accomplished it." "My dear, I ought to have done it years ago. I've spent my entire life witnessing them treat you like a second-class citizen, and I'm tired of it." When I awoke the following morning, I saw that my mother had removed her offensive message and replaced it with a new one. It was brief and legibly written with clenched teeth. I would want to express my regret to my daughter Helen for the offensive remarks I made regarding her property purchase. I was mistaken, and I'm pleased with what she accomplished in the next week. I ignored the incessant calls and texts from Sarah and my parents. They begged me to speak with Grandma and persuade her to amend the will in hundreds of voicemails. A few of the messages were begging. Some people were upset, but I removed them all. It's been 4 months since that day. I continue to live in my lovely home, which I like more and more every day. I decorated it just the way I wanted to, hosted dinner parties with friends, and even planted a little garden in the backyard. Although they still sometimes leave voicemails or texts, my parents and Sarah have mostly ceased attempting to get in touch with me. I don't answer. I've come to the conclusion that removing them from my life has really improved my happiness and reduced my stress. I currently speak with Grandma once a week. Her support has brought us closer than ever before, and I am thankful for it every day. She was correct when she predicted that everything would be well. I don't regret refusing to back down. I didn't want to be coerced into leaving this house after 8 years of hard work. For years, my family viewed me like an ATM, but now they understand that I won't simply give them my hard-earned wealth to make their life easy. Although I'm not sure I want to, I do occasionally wonder whether we'll ever get back together. They've shown their true selves to me, and I trust them. People who just appreciate what I can provide them are better off without me.